All right, now, let me emphasize again. There is no good or evil in this instrument. This is just an instrument. And whatever of good or evil goes through is the good and evil. Did I do something? Well, it wasn't the instrument that did it, it was I. And so you see, there really is no good or evil in the instrument. So you will find that there are people who eat apples and get very healthy from it, and others who get quite ill. There are people who have roses around them all the time, and they love it, and others who get very ill from the presence of roses and goldenrod and oysters. Actually, there is no good or evil in a flower. There is no good or evil in a plant, a fruit, a food of any kind, except such as universal belief gives it. And universal belief can do mighty strange things with it. Now, in order to heal spiritually, you must get this point so indelibly impressed in your mind that instantly it comes to light when someone tells you of some sickness in their body or mind or pocketbook. Instantly it must flash into your awareness, impossible. There is neither good nor evil in the body or in the condition, and you'll find as a rule that you'll break that whole hypnotism for them with a treatment that is as simple as that. If only you can do it quickly. If only you're always alert to have that come right to the front. If you live and move and have your being constantly in the realization that you are not to be hypnotized by appearances, you are not to believe that there is power in a creature, in an effect, in anything that can be seen, heard, tasted, touched, or smelled. Learn to withdraw power from anything that you can become aware of, and you'll find yourself instantly in spiritual consciousness where healing takes place, for yourself or for others. Now, you see why I said this morning that blind faith isn't going to get you anywhere in spiritual healing, or having faith that God is going to do something isn't going to do a thing for you. There has to be the understanding, ye shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free. You have got to know consciously this truth, that there is no power in the creature, no power in Pilate, no power in the organs and functions of the body, no power in a diseased appearance. All power is in me. All power is in the I of my being. I and my Father are one, and in that me-ness, in that I-ness, is the whole of the good of the Godhead bodily. I embrace and embody within my consciousness all of the good that God has, for I and the Father are one. And that withdraws the power of good and evil from these forms which we have been fearing. Now, these 2 points, no condemnation to any person, place, thing, circumstance, or condition, no condemnation, complete forgiveness, complete understanding, complete releasing of yourself and others from all condemnation, that's the first step. The second step is the realization that there is no power in anything that can be seen, heard, tasted, touched, or smelled. All power is in me. I, the God center of my being, and it flows out into expression for me and for all those who come within range of my consciousness. There is no power of good and no law of good to act upon you from anywhere external to yourself. There is no power of evil to act on you or in you or through you. There is only the power and presence of God within your own being, which flows out through you and as you, and upon all who come within range of your being. And you'd be surprised how many healings will take place as you are presented with these evil appearances and instantly recognize no power in effect, all power in me, in the eye of my being, the eye of his being or her being or its being, and holding your treatment right there. You'll have spiritual healing because you will have a principle of spiritual truth that there is only one power. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one power, one presence, one life. And it has no opposition and it has no opposing forces. Nowhere in all this world can the pilots of the world operate on, in, or through Christhood, which is our true identity. The specific truth about the error 2 times 2 is 5 is not the truth about the error that 3 times 3 is 10. The truth 2 times 2 is 4 heals 2 times 2 is 5. And that's true. But remember, you're dealing now with a mental thing, not a spiritual thing. And, as a matter of fact, it isn't true in spirit at all, because 3 times 3 can't be healed, and 2 times 2 can't be healed. The only thing that can ever be healed is our belief about them. And that we do by knowing the specific truth about anything there is in the world. That's a mental process. We do the same thing when, for instance, you come to a practitioner with a problem of supply. And the practitioner will not talk to you at that moment about sin or disease, but will present to you some illustration having to do with supply. For instance, in our work in the infinite way, if you were to bring to us the problem of lack, we would answer you something like this. We would say probably the error is that you are trying to get supply. And of course you can't. You can't demonstrate supply, and if you've been wasting time trying to, it's no wonder that you have failed. That's like trying to remove the ghost from the corner of the room there when there isn't one there. Supply exists in its infinity within you already, and you already have it. All that the Father hath is already yours, so nothing can be added to you. So to believe that you can demonstrate supply must be nonsense. The only thing you can demonstrate is the fact that you have infinity, that all that the Father hath is yours, that the whole kingdom of God is embodied within you. And we can show you how to bring about the expression of abundance in your experience. There are not many at first willing to pay the price, but those that are can very quickly demonstrate abundance. Start spending, start giving, start pouring out, and then you will find that it will be multiplied unto you. Now, I learned this from Scripture. This is not something that I made up out of my head, or you'd have a piece of mahogany probably, but actually the truth is that Elijah, well, I suppose Moses first, demonstrated the infinity of supply when he had manna fall from the sky. Elijah certainly demonstrated it for the poor widow, but he went a step further than Moses did. He showed how it's accomplished. He said, "What have you in the house?" And she said, "A few drops of oil." Well, he said, "Begin to pour." And she began to pour the few drops and found out that she had an infinity. It never has stopped pouring. That cruse of oil is still running. Now, the master, who was such a good student of the Old Testament, probably none better, he learned that same infinite nature of supply and how to demonstrate it. So that when the disciples came to him and said, we have a multitude who are an hungered, he just said to them what Elias said. What have we? And they said, a few loaves and fishes. And he answered the same as Elias did, Elijah. Break, divide, eat. When they did, they had 12 baskets full left over. So we know the principle of supply is pour, break, divide, give. And anybody can demonstrate in a reasonable length of time that there is no lack or limitation anywhere on earth except in the mind of those who are trying to get. For them there always will be lack. You probably have known, as I have, some people who are tremendously wealthy who are much more poverty-stricken than we are. They have the money, but they have too much fear to spend it. And say that they do without the very things that we have so much less are enjoying. Now, God is an infinity, but all that God has is yours. And so if you want to enjoy some of that infinity, begin using what you've got. It doesn't mean to be wasteful or extravagant or nonsensical, but it does mean to begin where you are with what you have and begin to let it loose without fear, and watch how, once you do let it loose, once you do begin to pour, the pouring keeps right on. Or once you do begin to break and divide, that the breaking and the dividing keeps right on going until everyone is satisfied and 12 baskets full are left over. Now, I have in this explanation handled specifically the subject of supply, but I have done it not for the purpose of demonstrating it, but for the purpose of teaching the principle. If I merely wanted to demonstrate it for you, I wouldn't have to tell you what the principle is. If you said, I have lack, and I said, I'll take care of it for you, you would find supply starting to come. Merely because I wouldn't go through this rehearsal that I've gone through with you, I would really probably just realize that there was nothing but this world hypnotism operating, and that would end it. But in teaching, I must teach the specific truth about these specific situations. Now, when I teach how to heal disease, I do the same thing. I do not take up cancers and consumption, corns or bunions or fevers or pimples as if they were something separate, but bulk it all under the head of disease. And so it is if we were handling sin or false appetites, we would bulk it all under that head, and we would begin to show you the same principle as you have seen in this illustration of supply. So that, to some extent, it is true that you must know specifically the nature of the error with which you're dealing, but not in the sense of having to know what wrong thinking you're doing that's causing your lack, because there's only one wrong thinking doing it, and that's the world belief that supply can come to you. Nothing else. There's no particular sin that you're committing. There's no particular form of wrong thinking that you personally are doing. There is a universal belief which you, in your ignorance, and I, in my ignorance, have in a measure accepted, and that is that supply can come to us. And that's the wrong thinking that we're doing. And once we know that supply can never come to us and never will come to us, and that we can't demonstrate it, the only thing we can demonstrate is God's allness. And the only way we can demonstrate it is by beginning to understand that we already have it. To him that hath shall be given, from him that hath not shall be taken away even the little that he hath. So any time a person says, I have a lack, be assured of this, they're going to demonstrate more lack. But the moment a person says, I have, they're going to demonstrate more have. So, in a sense then, we will specifically know truth about certain phases of life, but not in this sense of having to go through rheumatism, consumption, cancer, headaches, and all the rest of that, because sooner or later we would find ourselves up against diseases that haven't yet been named. We may have a few of those and not know what to do about them. No. To change the order of your life, begin to understand that you're not dealing with persons, places, things, and conditions. You're dealing with a state of hypnotism, a universal state of hypnotism that is hiding from us God's grace, God's abundance, God's allness, the harmony of God's being as our individual being. And that we can come into the grace of God by withdrawing power from the world of effect. There is no good, there is no evil in any effect. All good is in me. And watch the miracle that takes place in your experience. It has always been a mystery to me that in the animal kingdom there is so much killing, one species of another. Are they governed by God's laws of nature, or have they accepted or are governed by good and bad, as explained by you this morning? Indeed. Have I not told the story of the lady who was going through a market where she had just gone to get a fresh killed chicken that she had ordered? And as she was walking through the market with it under her arm, she saw a cat snatch at a bird, catch it in its mouth, and run away with it. And instantly she started to know the truth about the cat and the bird, and then discovered she had a chicken under her arm that she had just had killed. Certainly the animals aren't any better than we are. We have all brought ourselves and our pets under those same laws of living on or off of one another. And the stronger lives off of the weaker. However, when we come to the place that is revealed in the infinite way, where finally you come to the realization that I and the Father are one, and that everything is embodied within my individual being. All good is within me. And you stop looking out here for praise, for reward, for gratitude, for recognition, or for anything that man can give you. You stop. It's all right to say thank you when you say something nice and all this and that, but actually to believe that I need anyone's recognition or reward or gratitude, that's nonsense. All that I have need of, I'm supplied with from my Father. And if I constantly remember that, I set you free. And in your freedom, you think even more highly of me, because I'm not holding you in bondage to wanting something of you or from you. I know that God's grace is my sufficiency. I know that God's grace is my sufficiency in all things. And so I live and move and have my being 24 hours a day in that realization that all of which I shall ever have need, my Heavenly Father knows it in advance, and it is His good pleasure to give me that kingdom. Now, you see, as I live in that consciousness, I do not have to live on somebody or through somebody or by virtue of being a parasite to any person or any group of people. I find my sufficiency in what we call self-sufficiency, self with a capital S, sufficiency of God. Well, when we come then to that state of consciousness, we will find that we do not prey either upon each other or upon animals or things, and in turn we are not preyed upon. And so that is the lesson that each one of us learns, that we are preying upon each other in the degree that we are looking to each other for anything except the sharing of God's grace. That is the one legitimate thing that we can expect from each other. That is, that those who have 1 ounce more of God's grace will share it with us, and that we will share it with each other. Not for return, not for reward. You remember we have covered that subject under the heading of love in the booklet Love and Gratitude. Don't ever think for a single minute that anybody loves who is expecting a return for that love. Don't ever think for a minute that any person at all is truly in love who is expecting to get something out of that love or that union, whatever the nature of it may be. Love is not something that makes a demand upon anybody or anything for anything. It would be as foolish for you to love your cat and then wonder what it was going to give you in return. It isn't going to give you a thing except being a cat, that's all. Or a dog or a bird. And when we learn to have that relationship with each other, even in our family life, so that whatever we give or bestow or share, we do without any sense, well, in return you must do this, you will find also that we will have the same joyous love that we can have with our pets. It is only the fact that we demand something of each other that prevents us from getting it. When we set each other free and say, whatever God's grace gives me, I'll share with you, then we have put ourselves in the position to be fully supplied by the Father who knoweth our needs before we do, and whose pleasure it is to give us the kingdom. And it sets everyone else free to make their demonstration. Now, some people set free in that manner will become more selfish than they were before. But that's too bad for them, but not for you. Because you will attract to you and around you those who are receptive and responsive to your higher state of consciousness. And so you can only feel sorry for those around you who have tightened up even more than they were before. Is it the material body which manifests God? Let's stop right there. There's no such thing as a material body. You may be entertaining a material concept of body, but you haven't a material body. You only have one body. Know ye not that your body is the temple of the living God? It doesn't say anything about your real body or your unreal body or your astral body or what other body. It merely says your body. And this you may safely accept. Your body is the temple of the living God, and that means it is spiritual. It has no organs, it has no functions. It is spiritual. But we entertain, because of this good and evil business, we entertain a material concept of body, and that concept of body it is that gets all twisted up and gets us into trouble. It's our concept of body, not the body. The body has no power to cause us trouble. The body has no power to be good or bad or sick or well. It is our concept that does it. Just like it isn't some other person who gets us into trouble. It's our concept, our false concept of them that does that for us. When we know the truth about persons, and the only truth there is that God constitutes them, God is their life, soul, and being, God is their mind, when we know that, they don't cause trouble for us. If there's any trouble, we cause it. As ye sow, so shall ye reap. It has anything to do with the other fellow. Some years ago, last year, under the heading of cosmic law, we went all through that, through the teaching of the Master Christ Jesus. As ye sow, so shall ye reap. And if ye measure out judgment, in that same measure it will be measured back to you. He showed in every way that he understood cosmic law. And cosmic law is you're going to be done by as you do by. And there's no fooling about that. Do unto others as ye would have them do unto you is cosmic law. Now, to break cosmic law and to come out from the punishments of cosmic law, you must lift yourself above the goodness of the scribes and the Pharisees. Who were the scribes and the Pharisees? They were the best Jews in the world. They were so good that they wouldn't break a law of the church. They were so good that they wouldn't deviate one hair's breadth from what was set down in the books. That's how good they were. And yet the Master said, you must be better than they. And how can you be better than be humanly perfect? There's only one way. You have heard it said of old, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That's being humanly good and just. But I say unto you, resist not evil. Did you notice, was your attention called to something that happened in San Francisco last week? When a man who was sentenced to die under the law was put to death while the governor was trying to give him a stay of execution. And do you know what that has done in California? That has awakened people to the sin of demanding a tooth for a tooth and an eye for an eye and a life for a life. They're commencing to see that they're not Christians when they indulge that. They are Jews of the old school. The old school that said an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth and a life for a life. They're not Christians. Nobody's a Christian who demands revenge. Nobody's a Christian who demands an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth or a life for a life. That belongs to the Judaic school, which I'm sure that even the Hebrews of today would not live by and do not live by. Far less should Christians be living by such a code of law. And it took an incident like that last week to wake them up. Probably you also noticed that Queen Elizabeth of England signed a bill the other night outlawing the death penalty except for a few offenses of such a serious nature that they felt impelled to keep it. That is, when a criminal who has already killed someone keeps on killing. Only in that extreme case, or when a criminal kills an officer of the law. In order to protect the law, you see, in England, officers don't carry guns. The criminal is taught to honor their uniform. And no criminal in England will dishonor a policeman's uniform by using force against him if he's sane. And so it is that to prevent the few who may be mad, they have kept the death penalty, but only for those few. For the rest, they have abolished it. And one of the men who was the head of the movement that did that was Victor Gollancz, one of the great publishers and authors of England, the man who did the book, great compilation, Man and God, one of the great mystical compilations of modern times. He gave years and years of his life to seeing that that was abolished and teaching the people of England that it wasn't Christian to do this. Victor Gollancz himself is a very fine Christian who was a Jew. Now, you see, all these divisions of Jew and Gentile are nonsense today. It isn't a question of Jew or Gentile, it's a question of whether we go by Christian precepts or the ancient Judaic precepts. That's what constitutes our mysticism, not what particular church we were born in or not born in. So then, when you have the concept of a material sense of body, you are opening yourself to all of the sins and the diseases of the body. The moment you drop that concept and realize there are not 2 or 3 or 4 kinds of body, there's one body, and that body is the temple of the living God. There's just one body. That body is a temple of the living God, and it is God-governed and God-maintained and subject to the laws of God. You bring this very body under God's grace. And if you call it material, you're limiting yourself. But if you say, well, as I see it, I certainly have a material sense of it, I agree with you. We all do. Everyone has, in some measure, a material sense of body. Jesus had, right up to the ascension. Even at the crucifixion, you remember that when he walked the earth, he still had the marks of the nails and the sword in his side, showing that he was still entertaining some measure of material sense of body, although far less than we have. But at the ascension, he rose above, not above a physical body, not above a material body. He rose above a material sense of body, and then what became of all his wounds and the blood? It wasn't there anymore. It was just a pure white essence, so light in essence that it ascended out of sight. So with us. The ills of our body will evaporate in proportion as we give up believing that we have a material body and agree at the beginning that we are entertaining a material sense of body, and gradually lose that material sense in the realization that there is no power in effect. No power in the body, no power in the organs and functions of the body, no power in germs, no power in food. All power is given unto me, saith the Lord. How can we achieve a sense of our divine purpose in life? The first thing that we must do is lose the desire to achieve a sense of our divine purpose. Just as in desiring or wanting to achieve health, the first thing we have to do is stop desiring health. And if we want an abundance of supply, we must stop wanting an abundance of supply. Because the thing that you're wanting, you're never going to get. It's always going to be just 12 inches ahead of you out here, and you will be chasing it. It is when you give up the desire for it that it begins chasing you. Now, it's not my business what my purpose is in life. That's God's business. And when God reveals it to me, I will fulfill it. But so far in my personal experience, God has never revealed more than a day or a week or a month ahead of time what my purpose is or what his purpose is in me. That's why I so seldom know what I'm going to do next after this particular trip is over. That's about as far as God ever tells me his purpose or mine. Make this trip and that's all. Well, what are you going to do when you get home? Well, you know what I said last year. I'm going to stay home for a year or two. Well, of course, I didn't believe that myself, but you wanted an answer. I suppose if I had been searching what I think I would like, that was the answer. I think I would like to have stayed home for a year or two and sort of, perhaps you don't know it, I got 280,000 miles on my passport in the last 3.5 years. I don't know how many times around that world, but I'll tell you this, that it included 5 trips across the American continent down as far as the Caribbean Sea, 5 trips, this is the 5th, to Europe, and 3 completely around the world, which included 2 to China, 2 to India, 2 to North and South Africa, 1 to Australia, 5 around Europe. You know, that's a lot of traveling, so you wouldn't blame me if I'd say that I would like to stay home for a year or two. But one day, the nudge came, and here I am. And I can tell you that I'm going from here to New York and then to Europe, where more books are going to be brought out in British editions, and there'll be some more classes in England, Scotland, Holland, Sweden, and a little interview with publishers over there. And I presume that I should be home in June. That's the way it looks at this moment. And then we're going to have 2 classes in Hawaii in August. Now, as far as I know, life ends in August. At least so far as I know God's purpose, or that God has revealed his purpose to me, I haven't the faintest idea whether I'm coming back to the mainland, whether I'm staying in the islands in the fall, or going off in another direction. And so I have learned not to ask, not only what God's plan is, but not even what God's plan is for me, or not even what my purpose is. Day by day, the Father gives it to me. I knew no more of what we were going to do today than you knew when you came here. And it was only within 15 minutes before I came into the room this morning that, sitting in meditation, it unfolded to me, why should we have 2 lectures here today? Why not just a sort of a healing forum and take up all of the points. And so God's plan fulfilled itself today insofar as I could understand it today. I have no idea what's going to take place in New York, not the faintest. And I never have had on any trip. And so I say here, don't worry about God's purpose. What should you do in place of that? Wake up every morning and open yourself to God. And just let God fulfill himself in you today. And God may go as far as to let you know what to do tomorrow or next week. And if so, do it. But don't let your thought go further than that. Be satisfied. You might say that all the errors in the world have to do with the past or future. You know, there are no errors going on at this present minute. They're all things that we're regretting about the past and fearing about the future. It just happens that always right now we're all right. And so it is. If we would live in this minute agreeing that the presence and power of God is functioning me, and let that continue minute by minute, we will find no concern about the past and very little about the future. And in one way or another, we would know day by day what to do, and sometime for a few weeks in advance. What is our state of being when we pass from this world? One thing is certain, that those who are not on the spiritual path are not going to be put there just by the act of dying. So it's very safe to assume that they will be in the same state of consciousness when they awaken as they were when they left here. But, and this I know not from assumption but from experience, those who are on the spiritual path, regardless of how small a progress they may seem to have made, are instantly, by the very virtue of passing, lifted into a higher atmosphere than they had experienced here on earth. In other words, the very act of passing is a release from a great deal of this material sense of existence. If we're on the spiritual path, and of course that doesn't mean jumping out of a window to attain it, because that's an increase of material sense. But the very act of passing, even when it is accomplished through disease or accident, seems to release those that are on the spiritual path from much of the material sense of existence, and they instantly enter a higher consciousness. Now, the ultimate is that every one of us eventually attains complete Christ realization. Now, how many days, weeks, months, or eons, or how many times we have to return to the human sense of existence, that perhaps knoweth no man. One thing is certain: you did not choose to enter the spiritual path. You had no such power as a human being, because the only thing that the spiritual path can assure you is that it's going to destroy in you all the good things that you humanly expected to get from it. In other words, the spiritual life does not enhance our material good. It opens up a world of spiritual good. That is why people who believe that they can increase their physical health or physical wealth through spiritual means have lots of lessons coming to them. They will increase their physical health and their so-called financial wealth only in proportion as they drop those as aims and accept as their aim the desire for God realization. In the desire for God realization, it is true that all these things are added unto us. But the goal of spiritual life really isn't just a perfect physical life or a perfect financial life. That's not the goal of spiritual life. The goal of spiritual life is awakening in His image and likeness and realizing our spiritual identity as Christ, as sons of God. That's the goal of spiritual living. It does so happen that every incident of our human life does appear to improve. Physically, mentally, morally, and financially, it improves. But that isn't the goal. That just happens to be an added thing when our desire is not in that direction. When our desire is for God realization, for God attainment, for Christ realization, then it is that the Father opens up to us a realm that is beyond what any human being can know or understand. You cannot know what things God has laid up for those that love God. It is impossible for the human mind to grasp what is meant by Christ consciousness, spiritual consciousness, a spiritual realm, a spiritual universe, spiritual good. Only as we give up trying to be better humans or healthier humans or wealthier humans and turn our entire attention into the realization of our Christhood, will we then find ourselves so free of human entanglement that all of the human good is automatically found added unto us. Like the prisoners in prison who believe that by trying to pray to get out of prison they'll get out. They're wrong. They'll stay in and probably be bound with deeper chains. Whereas those in prison who will pray for God realization, for the realization of spiritual freedom, automatically they'll find that the chains break right off of the windows and doors and they walk outside free. I witnessed an actual experience of that in the case of a man who was about to be tried for murder and who was guilty of murder. And in his prison experience, he had found truth. And he had found it to quite a degree. And he said to me one day, "Isn't it too bad that just when I'm about to die, I have found this thing?" And my answer was, no, if you've really found it, you're not about to die. Because if you've really found it, you have found life eternal. That's what the Master said. If you find me, you find life eternal. The question is whether you have really found it or just putting on an act. And there's no use putting on an act because I can't get you out of this prison. But you can get yourself out if you have really attained this awareness. Well, it turned out, after a little questioning, that he really hadn't quite attained what he thought he had. Because I asked him that if he did get out and found himself broke outside, and a man passed by with a $20 bill sticking out of his pocket, what would he do about it? He said, "I'd grab it." He said, "You know, $20 is very precious when you're broke." I said, "Yes, I quite realize that, but I don't think you have quite attained." But it was only a few weeks later when he came to me and showed that he had had a physical healing through his own realization. And he said, I've got it now. "You have?" He said, "Why, yes." He said, "That fellow can have his $20 bill, and I'd like to add 20 to it." He said, "Any God can get me out of here isn't going to worry about my having $20. Well, that sounds much closer to it. And what actually happened was that as the day of the trial drew near, the district attorney sent for him and said, "I can't send you over. I just can't do it to you. Something's happened to you in this prison, and I've got to see that you get another chance." And he was given another chance. The board let him go free. Let him go free. He never was tried. Now, his desire for freedom didn't do it. It was when he caught the realization of what the Christ is and can do that he found his freedom. And so it is. Men of old, our Hebrew friends of old, who were in prison and prayed, weren't praying to get out of prison. They were praying hymns of praise to God. And in their hymns of praise to God, they found their freedom. So with us with our health. We don't get our health or our supply by wanting it, but by releasing ourselves from the fear of lack and the fear of disease and turning wholeheartedly to the realization there's no power in effect, there's neither good nor evil in effect, all good is in God, and I have to attain that awareness of God's presence and God's power, and my life is dedicated to that, and in proportion as I attain it, in that proportion do I find myself free of the limiting sense of human existence. Well, you see that with your background of this spiritual reading and hearing that you have been prepared for what you receive today. There are undoubtedly some here who could not be benefited what they heard here today. I mean, consciously benefited. They may have some indirect benefit, but they could not be benefited in the sense of understanding it or grasping it. And that is because you cannot grasp the things of God through your mind until your mind has been, in a measure, spiritually prepared for it. The Master brought that to light when he told us of the three types of soil: the rocky soil, the barren soil, and the fertile soil. And of course in the rocky soil nothing is going to grow. And in the barren soil, or vice versa, it might take on and grow a little, but then it will quickly die out. But in the fertile soil, that's where the crop grows. So with us. It is the years that you give to reading a spiritual message, the devotion that you give to the practice of a spiritual message, that fits you to receive the final Word of God itself, the Word that takes root and becomes flesh. It is the years of devotion. It is the years of, you might really say, toil, sweat, blood, tears. It all comes in, it all has its place, because it is a continuous wrenching away from our old material standpoints and standards, the things that we thought were good demonstration. You know, if we had an abundance of supply, we were demonstrating. If we had an abundance of health, we were demonstrating. And if we had a Cadillac, that was even a better demonstration. But you know now that you may be making your bed in hell, physically, mentally, morally, or financially, and really be on the way to a better demonstration than the person who at this minute is showing forth perfect health and perfect supply. There is a material sense of health and a material sense of supply, which may be abundant today, but which may not last. You see that all around you as you see the vitality of youth, and then watch them 30 years later and see how much of it is missing. It's because there was a physical sense of it, and now there's a physical sense of its absence. Whereas we're told that those who catch the spiritual glimpse will mount up as the eagles. Makes no difference what their age is. They bounce right up into vitality and strength and joy and abundance and all good things through the Spirit. Now, be not concerned with what your demonstration appears to be at any given moment of your life. Don't be concerned with whether you seem to be making a good demonstration or not such a good demonstration as your neighbor is making. That doesn't concern you. Be concerned with what devotion you are turning to the assimilation of a spiritual principle, and the demonstration in its time will take care of itself. I have told some of our students of the incident when I was a first reader in a Christian Science church, and about 5 minutes of 11 in the morning, just before I was going on the platform, I developed one of the, and it all happened in a couple of minutes, one of these terrible colds that was very evident in the eyes and nose and mouth. And I had to walk on the platform with two handkerchiefs up here. And I saw quite a lot of disapproval that a first reader should walk on a platform holding himself this way, giving evidences of so much error, which we're not supposed to have. But for 15 minutes, I stood on that platform reading that lesson and mopping all of the time. But in the 50th minute, it went just as it had come. Out of nowhere, it disappeared, and the handkerchiefs went back in my pocket, and I spoke normally, and I appeared normally. And then you ought to see the rejoicing afterward. Oh, why, you've proven Christian Science. Well, I said, of course. I was just one sick man with a cold up there, and you were about 250 Christian Scientists down here giving me treatment. Don't you think I ought to be well? Don't be ashamed of being sick today or poor today or sinful today if that's what you happen to be. Remember, it isn't your fault. It's the universal belief that brought you wherever you are at this particular moment. But take advantage of these spiritual principles and spiritual teachings and spiritual books and spiritual practitioners and teachers, and let them help you out of it into wherever it is that you dream to be. And in the same way, if you happen to hear by chance that I make a mistake, don't condemn me too harshly, but give me a good treatment. Because I'd like to be lifted above all of those coals, even the deeper ones, just as well as you would. And I appreciate as much as you do every time that you disregard my human appearance and behold the spiritual nature of that which is operating in me. And I do the same for you. I don't hold you in bondage to appearances of any moment. I don't hold you in bondage to your sins or your diseases, your lacks or your limitations, but I'm striving to see through that to the spiritual reality which is your true being. The only time I do get mad at you, and I do get mad sometimes, is when, with all the persistence with which I say these things to you, you refuse to accept them and expect me to mold us over to your liking. And that I can't do. And so I know occasionally some of you get a little mad at me, but I can't help it. I'm sticking with my 2 times 2 is 4. Well, there we are, and now we've had it, and I, for one, am very, very happy with today, and I hope I'll leave you in the same spirit.